some of those senior boys have to stand up and show the way for the kids. I'm not sure what they do, the West Coast Match Committee, but they have to get him to be using the ball better. There are no egos at Fremantle. They are all together and they are one.
I can't believe that. Surely you'd look for some security, wouldn't you, Diggers, in this business? Suddenly, I think that the Dockers are cactus. They have to come back. They have to come back through the back door, if you like, and that's not going to happen. Well, g'day, I'm Mark Stevens. I'm at Zero Hanger HQ, and welcome to another episode of The Outer Wing, brought to you by TABtouch. Real punters play here. As usual, my old mate Digby Beacham, the best journo out west, will join me. Let's get on with it. Well, g'day, Diggers. How's it been in Perth? Both teams losing. We haven't seen that for a while over there. How's the mood?
Oh, the mood's okay, Stevo. I think the fact that Fremantle fans, and particularly football fans in this state, get to see the Dockers back in action off a 5-day spin following that performance in Canberra, that's probably eased the disappointment, because we get to see the Fremantle team in a top-of-the-table showdown, which I think everyone's excited about.
Yeah, I did warn you, Diggers, didn't I? I said unsexy venue, going to Canberra, content and happy with themselves, well clear on top of the ladder. It was a game that really, it sort of had an asterisk on it, because GWS, it was a grand final for them. Freo, it was just a fluffer round, really. So do we take much out of it?
Oh, look, there's always learnings, and I dare say they would have reviewed a few things. In saying that, Stevo, they haven't had much time to reflect. They need to move on pretty quickly because, as we said, it is a 5-day break and you've got Sydney coming to town. But look, they weren't at their best, that we know. There were some key indicators that suggested, that they should have been worried. Flip side of that, they lost by 21 points. 21 points only. If you're losing by 21 points and you've had a bad day, I think you're going okay. And a 14-game winning streak prior to that would suggest they're okay.
Yeah, GWS are a lot better side than their position on the ladder when they click. So is it the loss they had to have? I mean, you really, nobody goes through, unless you're Essendon, in 2000 in such a way.
Yeah, look, that's fair. And look, you never want to lose, but I dare say what it does do, Steve, it sharpens the focus. It gives the coaches something to work with. They can reinforce that you need to be on all the time. So it gives them a bit of ammunition. It gives the leadership group a little bit to, I suppose, talk about with their players, their teammates. Fremantle are to march deep into September, and there is an expectation they'll do that. Maybe this performance in Canberra is one that they can look back on and say that was when we actually switched back on and we got back to what we know works for us. And I think you'll see a response this week against Sydney.
Now, I know it's 1v2. It looks great on paper, but in reality, Diggers, there's not a lot on the line this weekend. I mean, both sides probably locked in for top two. Doesn't matter if you finish first or second. So could the Dockers just leave something in the back pocket?
Yeah, well, look, I don't think they would want to. For mine, you're right. Fremantle and Sydney are going to finish 1-2. Now, is it Fremantle on top? Is it Sydney on top? Well, that will be revealed in the fullness of time. We'll learn that inside a couple of months. But I would think this is an opportunity for Fremantle to right the wrongs of last week. And if Sydney want to bring the heat, and look, Sydney's pressure last week was good, but they don't scream that side who's going to get up in your grill, much like what, say, GWS did, and when Brisbane really flexed, they can do. So for mine, it should be a game which is played more in the way that Fremantle will want to go about their business. And I think that you'll see Fremantle defend considerably better than what they did last week against GWS. I can't see a Charlie Curnow getting off the leash and kicking 7 like Stringer did. Toby Green's a superstar, that we know, but have Sydney got that hybrid forward like him who's capable of wreaking havoc on a scoreboard? Maybe Heaney, but I think that Heaney is going to be deployed more midfield for mine.
Yeah, they'll need him in the midfield for sure.
Yep.
Tom Papley's back though. He'll stir them up, Diggers, over there. He'll be like shot out of a cannon. Pappers.
He'll be fresh. He'll be fresh. Look, it's going to be a good game. Sydney have got a decent record over here in Perth, that we know. They've come over here in recent years and have played some excellent football. That's probably to be expected given where they've been on the ladder, but this ground holds no fears for them. They're going to be presented with a pretty good deck, I would think. The weather forecast is kind. So I dare say you'll see some entertaining football, but I think Fremantle rebound.
Yeah, I really like Freo. Having watched the game last week of Sydney Bulldogs, as a Bulldog supporter, it was a putrid game of footy, and Bulldogs couldn't have played any worse, lost by 35 and a goal in the last minute, so basically 5 goals. Yep. I didn't think Sydney was that good. Curnow kicked 6, poor defending, the ball was falling in his lap. I think it's going to be a lot tougher for Sydney this week. The bottom end looks vulnerable. They've still got some good players out, so you must like their chances, the Dockers, Diggers.
Yeah, I do. Look, no Hayden Young. He won't play. He's tweaked a groin, but he was running yesterday and it's not a serious setback, so I suspect he'll be available for the following week. Now, whether Fremantle elect to go with him or wait, they'll work through that with their sports science team. But all in all, they're pretty healthy. Who comes in? Is it going to be Wagner? Is it going to be Sharp? I think either one would fit pretty well, and they're in decent enough nick, it must be said, at waffle level with Peel. So again, they're pretty healthy, Fremantle. They're back at home. They haven't put a foot wrong at home all year, and I don't expect it to start tomorrow evening.
And you're still on the Sean Darcy bandwagon?
Yeah, I am. I think he just needs runs under his belt. But they have got the backup plan. They've got your man Mason Cox there waiting in the wings, and if Sean can't stand up or he doesn't play at the level required, they can pull that lever. But I think if Sean's upright and making enough of a contribution, he'll be a regular in that side.
What's your tip for this one, Diggers?
I think it's a 2 to 3 goal game. I think the TABtouch line here, Stevo, is really good. It's around that 12-13. It's 148, 270, something like that. I think it's a 2 or a 3 goal game, yes.
Yeah, I like the Dockers by 5 goals plus. I think there's value in that one. Not convinced by the Swans' form. Just got a bit of a rider on that game, that putrid game of footy, SCG, Friday night. So that's the Dockers. Now, what about West Coast? They've got to come over here to Melbourne and front the Doggies, who will have to rebound. That's going to be a tough assignment.
Yeah, very tough assignment. The Bulldogs have had their way with West Coast in recent times, Steve, and I can't see why there's any deviation from that. And West Coast have been really poor since they've resumed football post their mid-season bye. Their effort against Carlton was disgraceful, and I hated what I saw in the first 10 minutes, and you could even maybe extend that for the first 30 or 40 minutes. But that first 10 minutes last Friday night against Adelaide, it was disgusting. They just walked the ball out of the centre square, the Crows, and had they taken their opportunities, the game might have been done in the first 8, 9, 10 minutes. They've got to get back to work, West Coast.
Well, how does that happen, Diggers? I mean, like Nix was talking up, the Adelaide coach, so we've got to be on our toes here. This is Friday night footy. The Eagles are finally on a stage, big stage, home ground. As I said, primetime Friday night, and you don't turn up to play. Whose fault's that? The coach has to take some responsibility to have them revved up.
Yeah, well, it's coach, it's the leaders, and we'll get on the leaders and some of the experienced players in a second, Stevo. But all in all, they're just poor. The whole, whether it's the preparation, I don't know. You can only answer that if you're inside the 4 walls of that football club. But clearly they did not turn up to play, and they paid a price. Now, they were decent enough in the back end of the game. I don't like that, Stevo. I don't like sides who rally when the game is beyond them. It's like scoring a century in the second innings of a test match. Don't do it in the second innings. Do it in the first innings when the game's at its hottest. And West Coast, when that game was at its hottest last Friday night, they were nowhere to be seen.
So who needs to lift? Because we've seen signs of the experienced players. Are they doing enough?
Yeah, well, Elliot Yeo plays his 200th West Coast game this weekend, so a wonderful milestone for a really good servant of that football club. He All-Australian club champion. He's been a burster, Elliot Yeo, but he was very, very quiet last week. Their 2 co-captains have to stand up for mine, Stevo. Liam Duggan and Liam Baker. Liam Baker came over on a big contract and he vindicated that last year, winning the John Worsfold medal in his first season at the football club. And he was elevated to the co-captaincy alongside Liam Duggan with Oscar Allen moving to Brisbane. But he hasn't been as influential this year as we saw in 2025. He's perhaps found a bit more of the football over the past 3 to 4 weeks, but he's not at the level that we saw 12 months ago. And Liam Duggan, good man, good servant. Gee whiz, he can butcher the footy. And we saw it again on multiple occasions last week. He just turns it over. He slaughters the football and he needs to be better than that. So he has to be better. Liam Baker has to be better. Tim Kelly is in and out. Far too much for my liking. Jack Graham needs to start to develop some consistency in his output as well. So some of those senior boys have to stand up and show the way for the kids.
Liam Duggan, Diggers, besides that, I believe he wouldn't get a game in outside of West Coast. He's captain.
Yeah, I'm in your corner, Steve. I place a high premium and on emphasis on blokes who use the football well. And Liam, unfortunately, has never been one of those players. And he's playing in an area of the ground where you must be quite precise, because if you turn it over in the back half, you know what's going to happen. And unfortunately for Liam, that ball in the West Coast 5 or 6 years the last 5 or 6 years, I should say, it's lived in that back half. So if you're turning it over there, they're kicking a goal, the opposition. And unfortunately, Liam, he gets a lot of it, but his usage is just deplorable. And nothing seems to be done about it. So I'm not sure what they do, the West Coast Match Committee, but they have to get him to be using the ball better.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. What do they do with the Bont? Can anyone lock down on him? We saw Sydney manage it last week. He was strangely quiet. The Bont, Jordan sort of went to him at the start and then Bont couldn't get involved. What do they do?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure they have anyone who can go with the Bont, to be fair. And some clubs would say, well, they're not alone. He's a beast and he'll have his way with West Coast. On one thing that the Bont has done against probably most sides, but it just feels like because we watch so much football with Fremantle and West Coast, he's tormented both clubs over a long period of time. And I'm expecting he'll do the same. I've actually got him as one of my bet options this week. Stevo will get to that in a second, but I think the Bont has an afternoon out.
It'd be interesting to see what happens with English and Bailey Williams. The Dogs will be back, but the other Bailey Williams.
Yeah, well, he probably needs to be a little bit better than the Tim English situation. We've watched it from this side of the country. We follow Tim closely, given he's a West Australian boy. Steve, I'd like to get your insight there because it just seems bizarre. That performance last week against the Swans and the way he was coached by Luke Beveridge, it had everyone scratching their head over this part of the world. I'm not sure how you view it.
Yeah, he went in with a bit of a stiff back and didn't train too well during the week, didn't start overly well. Moved to full. I see him as a potential option as a key back because he moves well.
Would he see himself as a potential option as a key back? Would he see himself as being maybe, plonked down there and not utilising his assets? Therefore, would he entertain a move at the end of the year?
Well, to the back line, I would say no. I say judging by his body language, Diggers, he wasn't overly thrilled. He didn't go hard enough at some of the contests, the balls in the air. Some of them he should have marked and perhaps just put 2 hands up and sort of mock spoils at times.
Yeah.
It's pretty tough when you go back there. I still think he'll stay at the Bulldogs. There's some weird vibes going on, though, I've got to say. It was crazy. That can happen with Bevo, though. We've seen weird positional changes, and, of course, Bailey Smith couldn't get in the middle, which was fair enough. He's left. Dunkley was playing in the ruck. He departed. So it can happen, but I think you'll see if Tim English wants to be a serious footballer, he's going to go into the middle this week and make a statement. So I think that'll be an interesting battle, I think, right from the start. That'll be a key in the game.
Yeah, well, looking forward to it because, that's where the tone is set, isn't it, in the centre square, and you'd like to think that Tim is going to respond to his performance last week. I dare say there'll be a few questions asked of him internally, and his response will be fascinating. What's
your tip then, Diggers, in this one?
I think the Bulldogs have their way, Steve. I can't see it any other way, to be brutally honest. Given what we've seen from West Coast in the past fortnight, how can you possibly predict that they're going to be competitive off the performance at this ground 2 weeks ago against Carlton, and then what we saw in the first 30 to 40 minutes against the Crows? Bulldogs comfortably.
Yeah, I think 7 goals plus, and probably they'll put a margin in the game early, and it'll probably fluff around the whole game. Like, can happen these days. We get these dead games. We saw Essendon St Kilda, just a shocker as well, where the game's put away and then the teams just sort of go into a holding pattern, Diggers. So hopefully we can get something a bit more interesting. So that's the West Coast Eagles.
Could a mullet with tightly tapered sides reduce wind resistance, allowing for faster acceleration off the mark? Now that's something to think about. What are you really gambling with?
Now, Diggers, the news segment. Look, I'm really interested still in the cockroach, the coach at Freo, Justin Longmuir.
Yep.
He's on one of those EBAs, basically an agreement like if you're working in an office or whatever in the city, just a normal job. There's no contract, no 3 or 4 year term. So he was asked this week, would you sign a 4-year deal tomorrow? He said no. I can't believe that. Surely you'd look for some security, wouldn't you, Diggers, in this business?
Yeah, look, I'm not privy to the details of the ongoing staff arrangement agreement that Justin and the Fremantle Football Club have, Stevo. So I can't speak from that side of the room. But what I can say is that Justin, over his time at Fremantle, and I think that the players have bought in this year, he sort of preached, an approach which is selfless, committed, unified, and if we do it as a collective, we're going to be okay. And we've spoken on countless occasions this year that there are no egos at Fremantle. They are all together and they are one. And I think you're seeing that each and every week now. There's been a couple of blips on the radar, obviously, but all in all, this is a side which is very much connected. And I think if Justin was to all of a sudden say, yes, I'm ready to sign a contract extension, or yes, I'll take a phone call from Carlton or Essendon, there's a deviation from what he's preaching. So, and then how would the players look at that? They'd be saying internally, well, okay, well, what's going on? The coach has told us to do this, 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 and this, and all of a sudden he wants to be a little bit different. So I would say that Justin, is there a world where we think Justin isn't going to be at that football club for the next 2, 3, 4 years anyway? No. He's going to be well looked after. They're on the same page down there at Fremantle. And I'd ask this, Stevo, what's a contract worth anyway these days? Ask Brad Scott. He'll say not much.
Not much. You get a semi-payout. You don't get your full money. And I remember Neil Craig started this at Adelaide.
Yes.
I remember talking to him about it years ago at the Herald Sun. At the time, it was a talking point. He was a new age thinker. He was just on an EBA agreement, if you like, from year to year or just signed, and they worked it out. So Craigie was a man ahead of his time. Surely, though, you'd want some security. I liken it to Josh Fraser saying he's not interested in the Carlton job. I don't know. It seems like smoke to me, but it's working, Diggers. It's, he'd be on 800 plus, close to $1 million, surely anyway, wouldn't he?
Yeah, it'd be on half your salary, Steve. It would be said, Justin. But all in all, I think he's going to be okay. And look, if things go awry in the next 12 to 18 months, they may well come to a decision where, okay, Justin, this isn't for us, and therefore they've saved themselves a payout and it allows him to go and chase another job. But I'm expecting Justin Longmuir to be at the Fremantle Football Club long term. All
right, now Diggers' list. This is the one everyone waits for. Now, we're going something a bit different today because I've done the ladder predictor, and if I'm a Fremantle supporter, I'm getting jittery. I'm looking at it. I've got Brisbane now finishing 4th after that win against Geelong. That sort of shuffled those two pieces. So Freo are looking at Brisbane first week of the finals. Now, I'll ask you, Diggers, what 5 reasons why Fremantle supporters who are up and about, still nervous though, should be worried about the Brisbane Lions?
Well, I think if you're a Fremantle supporter, you're on pretty good terms with yourself given the body of work that your side has produced in 2026. But the spectre of Brisbane looms large. So if there are to be 5 reasons to be alarmed, and I'm not saying all of those in the Purple Army would be, but the first one would be experience, Stevo. We know that Brisbane have been there and done it. You know, they're pursuing a 4th successive grand final appearance, which is remarkable. It really is. And it just goes to show you how efficient they are at the pointy end of the season and the belief that they must have internally. So clearly experience counts in September. We've learnt that from a very young age, and Brisbane have it in spades. So that's one. Another thing that I think we need to factor in with Brisbane, they have an undeniable amount of A-graders. We've touched on this previously, Steve. I think them and Fremantle have the most A-graders on their list. Sydney have got some, but certainly not as many as Fremantle and Brisbane. And the experience that Brisbane possess and the class that they have is going to carry them a long way and continues to give them a reason to believe that a three-peat is attainable. The third point, they're starting to get healthy at the right time. They've still got some issues. Clearly, Darcy Gardner's going to be out for a period of time, and we learnt this week that Jack Payne is likely to miss the rest of the year. But all in all, they're getting back. Zorko's not far away. McCluggage, Berry, these sort of players. Oscar Allen is out of the picture at the moment. But all in all, the health is starting to improve, and that gives Chris Fagan and his match committee options at the selection table. The other point number 4, travelling in September holds no fears for them. We know that they've won preliminary finals at the MCG against Collingwood and Geelong in the last couple of years. They famously went to Western Sydney, I think it was in 24, Stevo, and gunned down the Giants out there in 24. They travel particularly well. So travelling in September can be hard if you're an interstate side to win, not for Brisbane. And the fifth point, which may be the most pertinent one from a Fremantle point of view here, is that they've got a really good record at Optus Stadium. They've beaten Fremantle 3 times at Optus Stadium. You only have to go back to last year, Steve. Was it round 23, round 24? They absolutely devastated the Dockers on the big stage. I think there was a lot of expectation about how Fremantle were going to go against Brisbane, but Brisbane flexed big time and did a number on the Dockers. So that's their most recent game against Fremantle in Perth, and I'm sure if they play in a big final, it's going to be brought up again.
Yeah, fascinating, isn't it? That's the one worry now. You're almost better to finish second, Diggers, and avoid this situation. So we'll wait and see.
Do you think they'll finish fourth and Hawthorn finishing third?
Maybe, yeah. I was just thinking they may push up, but it is a worry. Somebody's going to have to come through Brisbane in a prelim. And you're looking at it if you're Freo, thinking, gee, we've got to be ready for this. I just think it's added another curveball to the whole equation. If you lose, of course, that first home final, suddenly I think that the Dockers are cactus. They have to come back. They have to come back through the back door, if you like, and it's not going to happen.
Cactus. I hold a little bit more faith in Fremantle than you do, Stevo, but that's okay. We can agree to disagree. But
look, they might win that first one, but you'd want to win that first final. I'm not sure they can come back and win 3 in a row.
Yeah, it makes it tough, no doubt. So, look, if they can win that first final, get over here on a Thursday or a Friday night and get the joint pumping, get nearly 60,000 in there, it's going to be a pretty hard place to come and play. But you have to respect what Brisbane have been able to do over the last 3 years and what they look like they're starting to build in 2026.
All right, Diggers, what are your bets for this week for TABtouch? Real punters play here. Gamble responsibly, of course. So give us a couple of tips.
Well, the Fremantle-Sydney game is a fascinating one, and I'm probably seeing it a little bit different than yourself. I thought it would be quite close, and I think the line around that 12.5, 13-point margin is fair. So Fremantle for me, Stevo, 1-24, $3.30 with TABtouch.
I like it. What about the Bulldogs West Coast?
Well, I'm thinking that the Bont will kick at least 2 goals, and I think Aaron Norton can have an afternoon out inside Marvel Stadium and kick 3+. So for the Bont to kick 2 or more and Aaron to kick 3 or more, $3.80 with TABtouch, I think that represents excellent value.
Oh, I like that, Diggers. I hope that happens, and I'm on board for that. So thanks for joining us again. Another episode of The Outer Wing brought to you by TABtouch. Real punters play here on your Diggers. We'll be back next week.
You win some, you lose more. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.